Welcome back to the Energy Intelligence Forum. I'm joined this afternoon by Andy Flower, who is an independent consultant. Thank you so much for joining me, Andy. Just to start off, Andy, I wanted to ask you, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a significant impact on gas and LNG demand. How long do you think it will take LNG to resume its previous growth trajectory?
That is clearly a difficult question to answer, so we don't know how long the COVID will last. I mean, the effect on the gas market, the IEAs, they initially estimated be a 4% reduction in gas demand. They're now saying 3%. So it's pretty small compared with you're into teens of percent for the oil industry. So the effect has been limited. On LNG, we've seen quite a decline in demand over the summer, all the cancellations from the USA. We now, and prices were down to a level where it just wasn't worth lifting US LNG. Prices have increased, those liftings, the cancellations have just about stopped now. So we are returning to something like normal. So the outcome from this year is probably going to be 5 million tons, 10 million tons higher than last year. So there's still been some growth in LNG. At the beginning of the year, I thought it'd be 35 million ton increase before COVID. So it's had quite an impact. When will we get back to the growth rate we've seen before? Well, there's a lot of capacity under construction. That will be the driving force for growth in the next 4 or 5 years to 2025. And I think we'll see a reasonable increase, something like 20% increase in LNG supply by 2025, 20-25% increase. So I think we're going to return onto something of a growth trajectory over the next 5 years. Beyond 2025, it really depends on decisions made on new capacity over the next 2 years.
Okay, thank you. And what do you think the biggest challenges facing the global LNG industry today are?
I think the biggest challenge is the growth in demand. There's a lot of projects that are being developed. I can see about 500 million tons per annum of new capacity being planned, of which half is in the USA. For a lot of them, the big problem is which companies, which buyers, which off-takers will commit to the capacity and therefore put them in a position to raise the funds needed to develop. So where is the demand going to come from? I think that's one of the biggest factors. The established markets, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, some of the European markets, gas demand, LNG demand is not really growing. I mean, Europe, LNG imports are growing, but not necessarily LNG demand. It's more of a supply push. So we're turning now and looking at China, India, some Bangladesh, Pakistan, Southeast Asia. Some of those markets are very price sensitive, so will they be able to pay the prices that new developers need? So I think it's the demand which is the main factor, the main uncertainty is how things move forward.
Okay, thank you. And I mean, do you think that we could see a continued slowdown in FIDs taken on new LNG production facilities?
Yes, it's going to be interesting to see what happens next year. At the beginning of this year, I saw something like 200 million tons of new capacity on which the developers were saying they were targeting FID in 2020, half in the US, half outside the USA. There have been no FIDs. There are only 3 projects, in my view, that still haven't said they'll delay. That's the Guattari expansion, Costa Azul in Mexico, and Plaquemines in the USA. So everything's been pushed into 2021 or beyond. And how much of that will be in a position to take FID next year comes back to my answer to the previous question: where is the demand? Where are the buyers? In a world where we've still got probably uncertainty of COVID, certainly into the first half of next year, and also climate change, environmentalism is taking a role. So, can those projects meet some of the demands in terms of reducing carbon emissions, reducing methane emissions? So I think there's a lot more challenge as we go forward. So what will happen next year? Very difficult to say. We might get 3 or 4 projects, 40 million tons of FIDs, if we see COVID under some control in the first half of the year. I don't think we'll see into the 3 figures which are potentially being targeted.
Okay, thank you, Andy. And I mean, just to finish off, can you tell me what your key takeaways from the Energy Intelligence Forum have been so far?
Well, to be frank, I've only been watching parts of it. Where they've been talking about LNG, I'm still quite surprised at some of the optimism that's there. I mean, I guess if you're developing a project, you've got to be optimistic. And I think one of the messages which is coming through from US developers is one that the cancellations have shown how flexible US LNG is and how this is a great addition to the business. But it does give you flexibility, but it's pretty expensive flexibility at $10 to $12 million a cargo. And some of them are saying, well, that's better than take or pay. Well, firstly, very, very few take or pay. Very few cargoes have been paid for and not taken in the 60-year-old history of the LNG business. And if you do pay for a cargo you don't take, you get your money back when you take it. The money that's paid to the US projects is lost. It's gone to the developer. So I'm not sure that the US, yes, it's flexible, but it's pretty expensive flexibility.
Yeah.
And that's something that struck me in some of the presentations. I enjoyed Tom Earle's presentation yesterday evening and the video he showed of Calcasieu Pass. It's an amazing project, that the speed at which they're doing it. So there's been some positives from that.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Andy. Thank you for joining us, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.